The air is cold, yet soft with the scent of pine and salt. A fire crackles low inside a longhouse, its embers glowing like stars scattered across the floor. Outside, winter winds press against timber walls, but within, warmth and calm hold steady. Here, among the Vikings, rest was not a stolen moment, but a ritual of comfort, carefully woven from fur, firelight, and kinship. Imagine lying beneath heavy woolen blankets, while stories rose like smoke into the rafters, carrying dreams of distant seas. What do you think made sleep so precious in these long northern nights? Was it the weight of tradition, the strength of the hearth, or the quiet rhythm of the ocean beyond the fjords? Share your thoughts below, and let us know where you're listening from, and whether the night is just beginning for you or already deep. Now, dim your screen. Let the night close in, and step with me into the world where Vikings truly slept better than anyone in history. The longhouse rises in the shadows like the body of a great wooden ship, pulled ashore and turned upon the earth. Its frame is made of timber beams, cut from deep forests, fitted together with skill that has carried from generation to generation. The roof stretches low and sweeping, its covering of turf and thatch pressed thick against the wind. When snow drifts along the fjord, it piles silently against these walls, yet within, warmth and life remain steady. Inside, the first thing that greets you is the glow. Not the sharp light of candles, but the steady red heart of fire, smouldering in the central hearth. Sparks leap now and then, rising to vanish into the smoke hole above. Around it, the floor is pressed to earth, warm to the touch near the flames, cool at the edges where shadows gather. The smell is unmistakable, a mingling of pine resin, wool, and the faint salt carried in from the sea on the cloaks of fishermen returning at dusk. Here, in this chamber that is both home and shelter, the Vikings shaped the rhythm of their nights. They did not see sleep as a surrender, but as a weaving together of body, kinship, and story. And in the flicker of the longhouse fire, you can almost hear the hush of that ritual beginning. The benches along the walls serve as beds, lined with straw and covered with layers of sheepskin and thick woolen blankets. Each place is carefully prepared, for warmth was as precious as food itself. Families lay close, children between parents, elders wrapped in heavy furs. Sleep was not a solitary act, but a shared one, binding the household together under a roof that held both storm and silence at bay. Can you imagine the comfort of lying pressed against kin, the firelight dimming, the air carrying both the smoke of the hearth and the faint sweetness of dried herbs hung above? The longhouse is alive even as night falls. Chickens settle in their roosts. The occasional grunt of pigs sounds from the byre attached at one end, and the low hum of voices trails off into murmurs. Yet these sounds are not disturbances. They are the music of safety, reminders that all is as it should be, that nothing stirs beyond the walls that does not belong. The fire itself was tended with care, for the night depended on it. A bed of embers was never allowed to die, but covered with ash, so that in the morning it could be coaxed back to flame. Around this core, warmth spread slowly, rising to meet the beams blackened by smoke from countless nights. It was said that the longhouse had its own breath, its own heartbeat. Perhaps that is why sleep here was so deep, for it was not only the body that rested, but the spirit cradled by the pulse of the home itself. Outside, the cold pressed harder, and the wind swept across the fjords. The darkness in winter could stretch longer than the day, yet inside, time was measured differently. Not by the sun, but by the rhythm of the fire and the soft rise and fall of voices. Imagine yourself lying on a bench of wood softened with straw, the heavy fur across your chest, the fire casting shadows on the beams above. Your eyes begin to follow the dance of those shadows, and soon the shapes blur, carrying you toward dreams. But sleep was not rushed. Before rest, there was gathering. Families sat close to the fire, sharing stories that wound through memory and myth. The sagas told of voyages, of gods and men, of courage and the mysteries of fate. To children, these tales became lullabies, and to elders, reminders of the unbroken chain of their people. What better way to slip into dreams than with the sound of voices weaving sagas into the night? The warmth of the fire, the nearness of kin, the rhythm of stories. These were the pillars of Viking sleep. Unlike our modern world, with its distractions and artificial lights, their nights were guided by nature's own cues. Darkness came, and with it, rest. There was no separation between life and sleep, no walls of solitude dividing one from another. Sleep was part of life's current, not an interruption of it. Some might think of the Vikings as only raiders, fierce upon the sea, restless and wild. Yet here in the quiet of their homes, another truth takes shape. They valued stillness as deeply as action, and rest was honoured as much as labour. For a seafarer, sleep restored strength for voyages across oceans. For a farmer, it gave patience for tending fields when the thaw returned. Sleep was not weakness, it was wisdom. Consider how their world itself demanded rest. In winter, when snow lay heavy on the earth and darkness stretched long, the longhouse became a cocoon. Work outside slowed, and the nights extended. Sleep lengthened naturally, following the rhythm of the seasons. In summer, when the sun lingered late, the nights were shorter, and rest adjusted to the brightness. In this way, Viking sleep was not bound by strict hours, but by the breathing of the earth itself. Even the construction of the longhouse spoke of sleep. Its length, often stretching many meters, allowed entire families, servants, and sometimes even animals to be sheltered under one roof. This closeness brought warmth, both physical and emotional. Safety was not in isolation, but in togetherness. As the winds roared over the roof, inside, all were bound in a shared cocoon of breath and warmth, every exhale adding to the shelter's living atmosphere. Can you picture it? Snow drifting down outside, the fjord frozen, the sound of wind muffled by the thick turf roof. Inside, you lie wrapped in wool, the murmur of a story reaching your ears, the steady breath of your kin beside you. The fire glows, shadows shift, and for a moment, the line between waking and dreaming is thin. To understand why Vikings slept so well, we must begin here, at the hearth, at the fire, beneath the roof of the longhouse where night was not feared but embraced. Their sleep was deeper because it was whole, a blending of warmth, story, kinship, and trust in the walls that held them safe. And yet, the fire tells only the first part of the tale. For as night deepens, other elements shape the comfort of rest, the weight of blankets, the smell of herbs tucked among bedding, the rhythm of breathing in the dark. To step further into their world of sleep, we must lean closer, past the hearth, and see what dreams were made of in the folds of wool and fur. Beyond the glowing hearth, the heart of Viking rest lay in what wrapped the body. To sleep in a longhouse was to be held not only by family and fire, but by the thick weight of wool and the softness of fur. These were more than coverings. They were shields against the northern cold. crafted with skill and care that spoke of centuries of survival. Wool was the foundation. The sheep of the north gave fleeces that were coarse yet resilient, strands that could be spun into yarn, woven into cloth, or layered thick for bedding. When treated with lanolin, wool carried a faint, earthy scent, and its fibres resisted dampness. A gift in lands where sea winds often carried mist into the very walls of homes. Imagine lying beneath a woolen blanket so heavy it seemed to press gently upon your chest, its warmth deep and steady, each thread spun by hands that knew both patience and need. Over this came fur, deer hides, reindeer pelts, and sometimes even the soft fur of fox or bear were laid atop the straw and wool. Furs carried their own presence, the sleek smoothness of winter pelts, the dense underlayer that trapped warmth close to the body. Touch one with your hand, and you would feel not just softness, but the memory of forest and mountain, of the animal that once carried it through snow and wind. In this way, every layer of bedding was not only comfort, but connection to the land itself. It is easy to imagine the moment of settling down, boots removed, woolen tunic loosened, cloak set aside near the bed, the body lowered into straw covered in wool cloth, the crackle of dried grass beneath, softened by skins, then the furs drawn over, heavy and sure, cocooning the sleeper. A sigh escapes, not of exhaustion, but of release. Can you feel it? The body yielding its tension to layers that cradle and press, reminding it that here, warmth is secure. The Vikings knew the value of weight in sleep. Modern science tells us that weighted blankets calm the nervous system, slow the breath, and ease the mind towards slumber. Long before such studies, the Norse had already found this truth in the heft of wool and fur. Beneath their coverings, the world outside could rage with snow and storm, yet inside the Longhouse, sleep came with the certainty of being held close by the very fibres of survival. Herbs, too, sometimes found their way into bedding. Sweet-smelling plants, yarrow, juniper, angelica, were hung from the rafters to dry, but sprigs might also be tucked among the straw. Their fragrance blended with wool's earthy warmth and the faint smoke of the hearth, creating an air both soothing and clean. Imagine turning your head against a fur pillow and breathing in a hint of crushed herbs, the scent rising with each shift, comforting the mind as much as the body. For children, these beds became small caves of wonder. Nestled between parents or wrapped close in their own woolen coverings, they fell asleep listening to sagas, their small hands clutching the edges of fur. To them, the weight was not only physical, but emotional, the assurance that warmth and safety were always near. Elders, too, found comfort in these layers, their bones eased by the softness beneath, their dreams shaped by memory as much as by warmth. The craft of making such bedding was itself part of daily life. Women spun wool into yarn on spindles, weaving cloth on looms that took up space within the very same longhouses. Children gathered herbs, and hunters brought pelts. Each blanket, each covering carried with it the work of many hands, and the quiet promise of comfort on the coldest nights. To lie beneath one was to be reminded of community, of family effort woven into every thread. Picture a winter night in Norway. The wind howls, ice forms along the edges of the fjord, and snow falls thick upon the roof. Inside, you lie beneath 3 layers of wool, a reindeer pelt across your shoulders. The fire dims to embers, casting the room in a red haze. Each breath you release is met by the softness of fur against your cheek, each movement muffled by the weight above. Sleep does not come suddenly. It drifts in, like the snow outside, soft and inevitable. The Vikings travelled often, across seas, into forests, along trade routes, and yet they carried with them an understanding of sleep that was portable. Cloaks doubled as bedding, and furs folded into rolls became makeshift mattresses on ship decks or forest floors. The weight and warmth of wool and fur were companions, constants that made even distant lands feel more like home. Perhaps this explains why, no matter how far they voyaged, they were never strangers to rest. And though furs and wool were practical, they were not without beauty. Blankets were dyed with natural colours, muted reds from madder root, blues from woad, soft browns from oak bark. Patterns woven into cloth carried meaning, symbols of family or region. To sleep beneath such a covering was to rest under both warmth and identity, to feel wrapped not only in fabric, but in story. Even pillows, though simple, carried comfort. Stuffed with feathers, straw, or wool, they lifted the head slightly, cradling it against the hardness of wooden benches. Some were covered in soft linen or wool cloth, others simply bound hides. To close one's eyes against such a pillow, the scent of straw rising faintly, was to surrender to dreams that felt both grounded and free. Can you imagine now the sensation of drifting beneath such coverings, the fire's glow fading, voices softening, and the body held firmly by the embrace of wool and fur? Every shift met with warmth, every breath with safety. It was a world designed not for rushing, but for yielding, yielding to the night, to the rhythm of season and story. In this, perhaps, lies one of the secrets to why Vikings slept so well. Their nights were not carved into schedules or fractured by light. Instead, they lay within a system shaped by necessity, by craft, by nature itself. Every covering carried the memory of hands that spun it, of animals that walked the forests, of herbs gathered at dusk. Sleep was not separate from life. It was stitched, woven, and sewn into the very fabric of their existence. And so, beneath the weight of wool and fur, the body gave itself over to dreams. Dreams that might carry a seafarer across distant waves, or a farmer across green fields. Dreams that rose from the warmth of kinship and the certainty of survival. For here, in this cocoon of softness, sleep became more than rest. It became a deep remembering of the land, the people, and the endless rhythm of night and day. Yet, the story does not end here. For if warmth and weight shaped the comfort of Viking sleep, so too did the rituals that surrounded it. The feasts before nightfall, the voices that filled the air, the songs and sagas that became lullabies. To truly understand why their sleep was unmatched, we must next step into that twilight hour, when bellies were full, and stories rose like smoke into the beams of the Longhouse. The fire at the centre of the Longhouse was not only warmth and light, it was memory. Around its glow, voices rose and fell, weaving words into threads that bound the night together. If wool and fur wrapped the body, then stories wrapped the mind. For the Vikings, dreams began here, in the hush that followed a tale, in the pictures painted by a voice, in the slow drift from listening into slumber. The hearth was the heart of every longhouse. Its flames licked upward, sometimes fierce, sometimes low, but always steady. Families gathered close, the flicker painting faces in shades of gold and shadow. Children leaned against their mothers, elders rested hands upon carved staffs, and men stretched their legs after labour in fields or voyages at sea. In this circle, words became more than sound. They became vessels, carrying the imagination across oceans, into forests, or even into the realm of the gods. Picture the scene. The crackle of burning wood, the smell of smoke mingled with roasted fish or bread from the evening meal. Outside, winter winds whistle along the eaves, but within, the rhythm of a story fills the air. A skald, a poet, speaks with steady cadence, each line measured, each phrase flowing into the next. His voice is not hurried, but patient, like the beating of a drum. He tells of Odin wandering in disguise, or Thor striking down giants, or heroes who sailed farther than any had dared. Children's eyes widen, though their bodies grow heavy with sleep. The words are strange, full of mystery, yet familiar enough to comfort. Some children fight to stay awake, desperate to hear the ending. Others surrender, their heads nodding onto their mother's shoulders, the tale slipping seamlessly into dreams. For what is a dream but a continuation of a story, woven deeper within the mind? Even for adults, these sagas were more than entertainment. They were lessons about courage, fate, loyalty, and the fragile balance between gods and men. To fall asleep after hearing such words was to carry them inward, to let them work upon the soul. Perhaps this explains why Viking sleep was not only deep but meaningful. Their nights were filled with symbols, with archetypes, with voices that lingered even as the fire dimmed. Can you imagine it? Lying back on a bench, fur across your body, eyes half closed, as the voice of a skald drifts over you. The crackle of fire becomes the rhythm of oars. The shadows above your head stretch into mountain peaks. The story becomes not something you hear, but something you see, something you feel, something that takes you gently into the current of dream. The Hearth did more than shape stories. It shaped silence. When the last tale was told, when laughter softened into yawns, there was a moment of quiet that followed. Not empty, but full. Full of embers glowing, full of thoughts lingering, full of breath shared among kin. In that silence, sleep came naturally, a tide rising without resistance. There was no need to will it. The body, the mind, the spirit all knew. Now is the time. It is worth remembering that in the Viking world, light was precious. Torches and oil lamps existed, but they were costly, and their flames never matched the sun. Night was not something to be banished but embraced. When darkness fell, it was the fire that gave shape to the hours, and when the fire lowered, it was the signal that rest had come. There was no endless burning of lamps, no restless stretching of day into night. Their world accepted the rhythm of darkness, and so their sleep was deep, unbroken, natural. The Hearth also held memory of ancestors. Families spoke of those who had come before, recalling deeds and names, weaving them into the night as surely as wool was woven on a loom. In this way, sleep carried not only the self, but the community, the lineage, the unbroken thread of belonging. To dream beneath such memory was to feel never alone. Even the flicker of firelight itself shaped the mind. Watch flames for long enough and the eyes grow heavy, lulled by the dance of light. Shadows shift and blur, forming shapes that could be giants, ships, or gods. The mind wanders, caught between waking and dreaming, until sleep comes softly, without effort. This was the nightly gift of the Hearth. It invited imagination, then offered release. Sometimes songs were sung, low rhythmic chants, or soft melodies accompanied by the pluck of a lyre. The notes echoed within the timber walls, resonating with the very beams of the house. Music, like story, worked upon the heart, slowing its pace, steadying the breath. For children especially, lullabies carried them swiftly into dreams. For adults, The music was less a lullaby than a reminder that life's rhythm continued, that even in darkness harmony remained. Do you see how sleep in such a place was never empty? It was filled with fire, with voice, with silence, with memory. To close one's eyes was not to step away from life, but to enter another chamber of it. Perhaps this is why their sleep felt so whole. It did not separate them from the world, but carried the world within it. And so, as embers dimmed and voices faded, the hearth remained. Its glow flickered faintly, casting long shadows that reached into every corner of the longhouse. The warmth it gave was less about heat now, more about presence, a reminder that though night was long, safety endured. Under this watch, dreams unfolded, of gods wandering the 9 worlds, of ships crossing endless seas, of fields greening again after winter's end. In these dreams, courage was rehearsed, journeys imagined, futures foretold. And in waking, perhaps, those who dreamed carried something forward, a strength, a vision, a memory that guided them. Sleep was not wasted time. It was part of the story, as real as the day itself. Can you picture it? The last crackle of wood, the faint rise of smoke curling through the roof hole, the sound of breathing filling the chamber, steady and calm. A child stirs, turning beneath her wool blanket. An elder sighs, pulling his fur closer. Outside, snow continues to fall, but within, dreams weave themselves, thread upon thread, until the night is full. This is why we may say the Vikings slept better than most. Their bodies were warmed, their minds were softened, their spirits were carried by story. All 3, body, mind, spirit, were embraced, as surely as the longhouse itself embraced all who slept within it. And yet, to understand their rest fully, we must go further still. For beyond the fire, beyond the furs, there is the vastness of the night itself, the winter sky, the endless stars, the silence of snow. The Vikings did not only sleep within their homes, they slept with the rhythm of nature itself. To step outside the longhouse is to see the true expanse of their nights and to realize how the world beyond shaped the peace within. The longhouse grows quiet as the last voices fade, yet beyond its timbered walls, the world itself speaks in another language. Winter in the north is not a single night, nor a fleeting season. It is a deep, patient presence, wrapping the land in stillness for months on end. The Vikings lived not in spite of it, but with it, and in that companionship they found one of the great secrets of sleep. In winter, darkness lingered far beyond what we know today. The sun, when it rose, hung low on the horizon, casting pale light for only a few hours before slipping away. Night stretched long, swallowing most of the day. Imagine the feeling, waking in twilight, working by dim glow, then returning again to shadow. For some, this might feel oppressive, but for the Vikings, it was rhythm, a chance to draw inward, to rest, to let the body and spirit move at nature's pace. The snow fell thick and constant, softening the world with silence. Each flake landed without sound, building drifts that muffled footsteps, coated rooftops, and bent branches low. Outside, the fjord might freeze, or lie still beneath sheets of ice. Winds swept over hills, yet even their roar was dulled by snow's heavy hand. To step into such a night was to enter a world muted, dreamlike, where every sound seemed far away. And within such quiet, the mind too grew still, ready for sleep. Picture the longhouse under snow, its roof nearly hidden, its walls banked with white, the entrance marked only by a dark outline against drifts. Inside, the fire glowed red, but outside, the night stretched, endless. There were no lamps, no cities casting light into the sky. Above, stars blazed fierce and countless, the Milky Way spilling across heaven like a river of frost. On clear nights, the northern lights shimmered, green, violet, gold, rippling like silk banners across the firmament. Can you imagine lying down beneath your furs, the memory of such a sky still fresh in your eyes? Surely dreams, then, must have carried its colours. The body, too, adjusted to this winter rhythm. Modern people measure sleep in strict hours, but for the Vikings, time flowed differently. In deep winter, they might sleep in 2 parts, an early slumber soon after dark, then waking in the middle of the night for a short watch, perhaps to tend the fire or share a whispered story. Afterward, they would drift back to sleep until the faint light of dawn returned. This pattern, sometimes called first sleep and second sleep, was natural to the rhythm of long nights. It allowed rest not only in length, but in depth, cycles of slumber that carried them gently, unhurriedly, through the endless dark. There was no rush to shorten the night. Darkness was not enemy, but companion. Where we today might struggle with restless thoughts in such hours, the Vikings folded them into their nights. Dreams were shared in morning, omens considered, visions remembered. Sleep was not only for the body, but for the mind's wandering, for the spirit's listening. In the hush of long winter, such listening came easily. Food played its part too. In winter, meals were heavy, warming, stews of meat and root vegetables, bread baked dense and hearty, dried fish rehydrated in broth. After eating, warmth spread through the body, making rest come naturally. With fewer tasks possible in the frozen months, evening stretched long, and the body gave itself freely to rest, untroubled by urgency. Can you feel it? The slow rhythm of a world at ease with itself, where night is no burden but gift. The cold outside was fierce, yet the Vikings mastered it not only with fire and fur, but with acceptance. They did not demand that winter be summer. Instead, they adapted, folding themselves into its pace. Sleep became longer, deeper, more necessary. A farmer might dream of spring fields while the snow lay heavy. A sailor might dream of voyages while ships rested ashore. Winter was a season of dreaming itself, when life paused just enough for imagination to stretch forward. Inside the Longhouse, such dreaming was communal. Dozens might share one space, each with their own bench or bedding, but all under the same roof, all breathing the same air warmed by fire and body heat. The closeness created a cocoon. Even the sounds of night, a cough, a shifting blanket, the murmur of someone half awake, were not disturbances but reminders of belonging. In winter's dark, solitude could be heavy, but in the Longhouse, solitude never came. Every dream was part of a larger whole. There is comfort, too, in knowing the land itself sleeps. Fields lie fallow, rivers freeze, animals burrow into dens. The world slows, and humanity follows. To close one's eyes beneath fur blankets is to join that greater rest, to become part of the earth's long exhale. Even the gods in their myths were said to dwell differently in winter, less in battle, more in waiting, watching. To sleep in winter was to move with the very fabric of existence, never against it. Can you see it? The family gathered at dusk, the fire glowing strong, the meal shared, the stories told. Slowly, voices soften, children curl against their parents, elders settle into blankets. The hearth lowers to embers, casting a gentle red across the rafters. Outside, snow drifts higher. The aurora glimmers faintly beyond the smoke hole. one by one, breaths slow, and the longhouse itself seems to sigh, as if the building too has drifted into sleep. In such nights, dreams did not need to be hurried. They stretched long, as endless as the winter sky. A boy might dream of rowing across summer seas, a woman of weaving new cloth in spring sun, an elder of walking again with ancestors long gone. When morning came, slow, grey, uncertain, the dreams lingered, carried into waking like embers carried into flame. Perhaps this is why the Vikings slept so well. Their rest was not at odds with nature, but aligned with it. Darkness invited stillness, cold invited closeness, silence invited reflection. The very hardships of winter became comforts, for they slowed the world, pressed it inward, and reminded each soul that rest is as vital as toil. And yet, not every night was the same. There were feasts, great gatherings to mark the turning of seasons, to honour gods, to welcome Yule. In those nights, the longhouse rang with song, with laughter, with the clatter of cups. But even then, when the fire burned brightest and voices rose loudest, the end was the same. Slumber beneath wool and fur, the body at peace, the mind softened by story and drink. Winter, whether quiet or joyous, always led back to sleep. So the long, endless nights of the north were not endured. They were cherished. They shaped dreams as much as they shaped lives, teaching the Vikings to rest deeply, fully, without resistance. And as we listen to the hush of their world, we may feel it ourselves. The calm of snow, the stillness of stars, the embrace of darkness that asks for nothing but surrender. Yet there is another rhythm to explore, not only winter's silence, but the pulsing of the sea, the creak of oars, the rocking of ships. For the Vikings were not always at home. Much of their lives was spent on water, and there too, they found ways to rest. To understand the fullness of their sleep, we must set aside the snow for now and feel the steady sway of the ocean. The sea was never far from a Viking's life. Fjords cut deep into the land, and every inlet seemed to open toward horizons that beckoned with promise. To the Vikings, the ocean was both road and companion, a shifting, breathing presence that carried them to distant lands. And though the sea demanded strength, it also offered its own kind of rest. Picture a longship on open waters. Its hull rises and falls with the swell, oars dipping in steady rhythm. The creak of timber, the splash of water, the wind snapping against a square sail, all combine into a pattern both relentless and calming. For those who live so much of life at sea, this rhythm became part of their bodies. And when night came, it was that rhythm which rocked them into sleep. Rest aboard a longship was not the softness of a fur-lined bench, yet it carried its own comforts. Warriors and traders alike lay upon wooden planks, cloaks wrapped tight against chill winds, their heads resting on bundles of gear. Furs, when carried, served as both warmth and pillow. Sometimes straw or hay brought from home softened the boards. The sea beneath was constant, lulling them with its movement, cradling even the weary into slumber. Can you imagine it? The stars overhead, clear and countless, reflecting on black water. The mast groaning gently, the sail fluttering as the wind shifts. Around you, the steady breathing of comrades, each wrapped in their own cloak, each surrendered to rest. The ship itself feels alive, rocking and sighing like a great wooden cradle. Sleep comes not in silence, but in rhythm, the eternal heartbeat of oars and waves. There is a strange peace in such nights. The dangers of the sea were real, Yet when weather allowed, the ship became a floating longhouse, carrying its family across water. Men took turns keeping watch, their eyes on the horizon, while others slept. Trust bound them, trust in the helmsman, trust in the gods, trust in the ship itself. With that trust, sleep could come even on restless waters. The sound of the ocean is its own lullaby. Waves slapping against the hull, water gurgling along the sides, wind whistling through rigging. These were constant companions, rhythms that soothed rather than disturbed. Even storms, when past, left behind a strange hush, a gentle swell that rocked the body as if the sea itself offered apology for its anger. Can you feel that sway now, as though your bed were rocking gently beneath you? By day, oarsmen rowed in shifts, muscles straining, sweat mingling with salt spray. By night, they rested, their bodies grateful for even hard planks. The exhaustion of labour carried them swiftly into dreams. Their cloaks smelled of sea, their hair stiff with brine, yet none of this mattered. The body, tired and trusting, gave itself easily to slumber. Perhaps that is why even on voyages, sleep was deep, earned fully by the day's effort. The sea also carried song. Oarsmen often rowed to rhythm, chanting verses, humming tunes that kept their strokes in time. These songs lingered after rowing ceased, echoing in minds long into night. To fall asleep with such rhythm still pulsing within was to dream of movement, of steady progress across unseen worlds. Even in rest, the journey continued. The stars themselves watched over sleeping sailors. Without lamps or fire aboard, night skies blazed with clarity. The North Star, fixed above, guided them as surely as any compass. To close one's eyes beneath such heavens was to surrender not to darkness but to a canopy of light. Perhaps dreams then carried those lights within, stars flickering behind closed eyelids, constellations weaving stories in the mind. Food at sea was simple: dried fish, hard bread, sometimes mead or ale. These meals filled the stomach, heavy enough to steady the body, yet plain enough not to disturb rest. After eating, men wrapped themselves tightly and let the sea's motion take them. Hunger was rare at night, for meals were shared with care, and even when food grew scarce, the rhythm of labour ensured exhaustion always outweighed want. There were moments too when ships landed on foreign shores, pulled up upon sand or riverbank. Then sleep returned to earth, to cloaks spread upon grass, to furs laid beneath stars. Fires were lit, much like in longhouses, though smaller, flickering against the vast dark of unknown lands. In those nights, sleep was both comfort and necessity. Rest restored courage for days of trade or battle, exploration or return. And in the warmth of firelight, even distant lands could feel, for a moment, like home. Do you see how rest, whether at sea or ashore, was never abandoned? The Vikings carried sleep with them, adapted it to each setting. Their wisdom was not only in strength, but in knowing when to yield, to the rocking of ships, to the softness of cloaks, to the music of the sea. Perhaps this is why they thrived in lands both near and far. They did not resist rest, but folded it into every journey. Imagine now lying aboard a longship. The deck is hard, yet the cloak beneath you holds warmth. Your head rests on a bundle of rope, faintly smelling of tar. Above, the stars spread endless, the Milky Way shimmering like frost. Around you, comrades breathe in rhythm, their chests rising and falling like the sea itself. The ship sways, not sharply, but steadily, as though the ocean cradles it in great arms. Your body gives itself over, your mind drifts, and soon the rhythm of oars is no longer sound but dream, carrying you farther into night. Even danger could not banish rest entirely. Storms came, yes, and battles loomed. But when the sea calmed, sleep returned as naturally as breath. The Vikings knew that strength required surrender, that courage was born from restoration. To sleep, even in uncertainty, was itself an act of trust. Trust in gods, in kin, in the endless cycle of day and night. And so, dreams at sea were vivid, shaped by rhythm and horizon. Men dreamed of home, of fires and furs, of wives and children waiting by Longhouse hearths. They dreamed too of gods walking the waves, of Odin whispering wisdom on the wind, of Thor's hammer striking lightning across storm clouds. These dreams gave strength, reminded them of why they journeyed, and carried them through nights of distance. When dawn broke, it came not with alarm or clock, but with the changing sky, the shifting wind, the call of seabirds. Men stirred, stretched, rubbed sleep from eyes stiff with salt. Yet the rest they carried was real, deep, unbroken by worry. They rose not weary, but ready, their bodies renewed by the very rhythm of the ocean. Perhaps this is the greatest lesson of Viking sleep. It was adaptable. Whether in the cocoon of winter, beneath firs in a longhouse, or upon the swaying deck of a ship, rest was embraced, never resisted. They trusted the world, land, sea, sky, to cradle them. And in that trust, they found peace. So the rhythm of ocean and oars lulled them as surely as the silence of snow. Both were companions, both shaped dreams. And in both, the Vikings discovered rest not as escape, but as part of life itself, a rhythm as steady as breath, as endless as waves. Yet their nights held more than fire and sea. For once bellies were filled, once cloaks were drawn close, another element of Viking sleep revealed itself. The feasts before slumber, the meals and rituals that warmed body and spirit alike. To step further into their world of rest, we must now linger at the table, where laughter and food prepared the way for dreams. Evening in a Viking longhouse was not only for firelight and stories, it was also the time when bellies were filled, when laughter echoed across timber beams, and when the warmth of food and drink prepared every body for the deep embrace of sleep. If wool and fur wrapped the body and stories wrapped the mind, then meals wrapped the spirit. The day's labours ended with gathering at the hearth. Farmers returned from fields, fishers from the fjord, craftsmen from their work. Cloaks damp with mist were hung to dry, boots set near the fire. Soon, the air filled with the scent of cooking, the bubbling of stew, the crackle of fat on iron, the sweet, dense aroma of bread. These smells alone were comfort, a promise that hunger would be answered, that strength lost to toil would be restored. Imagine the meal, a large cauldron suspended over fire, filled with meat, root vegetables, herbs gathered from summer fields and dried for winter. The broth steamed, carrying fragrance into every corner of the hall. Flatbreads were baked on stones or iron plates, their edges crisp, their centers soft. Fish caught and dried in warmer months was rehydrated and simmered. Sometimes ale or mead was poured, golden, honey-scented, warming the throat. Every dish was simple yet rich, filling not only the body but the spirit with assurance. There was enough. The act of eating was communal. Food was shared from common bowls, passed hand to hand, ensuring all had their portion. Children laughed, dipping bread into stew, while elders chewed slowly, savouring. Talk filled the air, recounting the day's labours, recalling hunts or planning voyages yet to come. The longhouse became more than shelter. It was the heart of life itself, beating strongest in these evening hours. And as the meal ended, a calm spread through the hall. Full bellies brought warmth that no cloak alone could give. Muscles, stiff from work, softened in release. Eyes grew heavy, though laughter still lingered. The body, fed and satisfied, was ready to yield to rest. There is a wisdom in this. Modern science tells us that certain foods aid sleep. Warm meals, rich in fats and proteins. Small amounts of alcohol that calm the spirit. Herbs that soothe the mind. Long before studies and words, the Vikings lived this truth. Their evening feasts were more than sustenance. They were rituals of rest, signals to body and soul alike that night had come, and it was safe to surrender. Can you picture it? A child yawns, head leaning against a parent's arm, stew still warm in the belly. An elder sets aside a drinking horn, eyes already half closed. Even the fire seems to soften, burning lower, as if it, too, is ready to rest. The hall grows quieter, yet the warmth remains, held not only in embers, but in bodies nourished and content. Feasting was not always grand. In lean seasons, meals might be plain, porridge from barley or oats, perhaps a bit of dried fish, thin broth flavoured with herbs. Yet even these simple dishes held comfort. They were familiar, grounding, reminders of continuity. To eat, even simply, was to know one would endure, and endurance itself brought rest. But there were nights when feasts truly were grand. Festivals like Yule filled the Longhouse with abundance. Roasted meats, breads heavy with butter, cups overflowing with mead. On such nights, the hall rang with song and cheer. Torches flared bright, and even the air seemed to pulse with life. Sleep, when it finally came, was heavy and unshakable. The body sunk deep into fur and straw after hours of feasting. The dreams that followed such nights were wild, vivid, carrying echoes of laughter and the cadence of songs. Alcohol, too, had its place. Mead, brewed from honey, was sweet and warming. Ale, made from barley, was hearty and grounding. These drinks, shared in moderation, loosened tongues, softened hearts, and prepared minds for the quiet of night. Too much, of course, could bring restless sleep. But in balance, they worked as gentle bridges between wakefulness and dream. Food carried symbolism as well. Bread broken together bound kinship. Meat roasted on festival days honoured the gods. To eat was never only to satisfy hunger, but to acknowledge life's rhythm, to mark time, to give thanks. Perhaps this is why even ordinary suppers carried such peace. Each meal reminded the Vikings that they were part of something greater. Family, tradition, and the endless cycle of work and rest. Can you feel it now? The hall after supper, dim and hushed, bellies warm, faces softened by firelight. A child drifts to sleep even before bedding is prepared, head pillowed on a folded cloak. A dog curls near the hearth, sighing into dreams. Adults speak in lower voices, their words slower, gentler, until even conversation gives way to silence. The feast is finished, and in its wake comes the sweetest of hungers, the hunger for sleep. And sleep after a meal is different, heavier, calmer, more certain. The body, busy in digestion, draws blood inward, warming the core. The mind, satisfied, releases its grip on wakefulness. Lids lower, breaths deepen, and slumber takes hold like a tide returning to shore. For the Vikings, this was nightly ritual. To feast was to prepare, to mark the transition from labour to rest. And so, their sleep came not in isolation, but as part of a continuum. Work, food, fire, story, dream. Each flowed into the next, each essential to the whole. Yet food was only one part of this ritual. For after feasting, after bellies were filled and laughter softened, another voice rose in the hall, the voice of song, of story, of sagas spoken into darkness. These were the lullabies of an entire people, weaving minds toward dreams. And so, to understand the fullness of their rest, we must now listen closely, as whispers of saga and song drift upward into the rafters, and the hall itself becomes a cradle for dreams. The meal is finished. Bowls have been set aside, cups emptied, the last crumbs brushed from wooden tables. The longhouse grows quieter, though the hearth still glows with steady embers. Yet night does not rush to silence. Before sleep fully descends, there is one more ritual, as ancient as fire itself. The sharing of stories, the lifting of song, the weaving of words that prepare the mind for dreams. For the Vikings, story was not a pastime. It was a way of being. In every longhouse, tales lived as surely as the smoke that curled into rafters. Some were sagas of gods, Odin wandering in disguise, Thor raising his hammer against giants, Freya searching for her lost husband. Others were stories of ancestors, of heroes who crossed seas or defended farms, whose names still echoed in memory. Each word was a thread, binding past to present, weaving identity into every listener. Picture the scene, families gathered close, bellies warm, furs drawn about shoulders, children nestle against their parents, eyes wide though heavy with sleep. An elder clears his throat, the hall falling into hush. His voice begins low and steady, each syllable shaped with care. It rises and falls like the sea itself, carrying listeners outward, then inward again. The cadence of a saga is slow, measured, almost musical. The repetition of names, the rhythm of kennings, the pauses between lines, all of these work upon the ear like a spell. For children, the sound is lullaby. For adults, it is meditation. Can you feel it now? The mind relaxing, the breath deepening, as though the very act of listening carries you towards slumber. Songs, too, filled these nights. Sometimes simple chants, sung in low unison, voices blending in the dim light. Other times, the strum of a lyre or harp accompanied verses. The notes echoed against wooden beams, resonating through the hall like gentle waves. Some songs told stories, others were prayers, still others mere melodies hummed for the pleasure of sound itself. But all carried the same gift. They softened the spirit, wrapping thought in rhythm, inviting dreams to rise. For children, there were lullabies. Mothers sang in voices soft as wool, fathers sometimes joining with a hum. These songs were not ornate, but simple, steady, filled with the imagery of home, fields and fjords, fire and kin. A child listening would drift into sleep not with fear, but with comfort, knowing that the world was safe, that voices would always rise to surround them. Even warriors found rest in song. After days of labor or travel, a chant might steady their breath, carrying away the tension of muscle and mind. In the dark of winter, when days were short and longhouse nights endless, music kept spirits alive. To sing together was to affirm belonging, to remind one another, we are not alone. And sleep, born from such belonging, came deeper, more certain. The sagas themselves often lingered into dreams. A boy who listened to tales of Thor might dream of swinging a mighty hammer. A woman who heard of Freya might dream of golden fields, of love and longing. An elder might dream of battles remembered, or of gods waiting beyond death. These dreams were not seen as idle fancy, but as part of life, glimpses into mystery, omens, or even messages from the divine. The hearth, meanwhile, glowed low, shadows flickering against walls. Story and fire together worked upon the senses. Light danced as words moved, smoke curled as voices rose. The entire longhouse became part of the ritual, its beams echoing song, its walls sheltering memory. In such moments, home was not only structure but spirit. Can you imagine lying back, fur pulled close, eyes half closed as voices flow around you? The story becomes less about hearing and more about feeling, a rhythm that carries you outward, then inward, until the line between wakefulness and dream blurs. Perhaps you catch only fragments. Odin, disguised. Thor's hammer fell. Freya's tears, golden as amber. And then those fragments weave themselves into your sleep, continuing the tale where the waking voice left off. Songs of travel often filled the hall too. Men sang of voyages past, of rivers and seas crossed, of strange lands visited. Their voices were steady, proud, yet tinged with longing. These songs carried both memory and hope, reminders of where they had been and where they might yet go. To fall asleep listening to such words was to dream of horizons, of distant coasts, of winds filling sails. The skald, the poet, held a special role. His duty was to remember, to recite, to keep stories alive. He might stand near the hearth, shadows flickering across his face as he recited long verses from memory. Listeners sat in awe, even if words blurred in drowsy ears. For the skald's voice was more than sound. It was bridge, carrying gods and heroes into the present, binding generations with invisible thread. Sleep after such recitation was not ordinary rest. It was sleep filled with meaning, the sense that one belonged to something vast and eternal. And sometimes there was silence. Not all nights were filled with long sagas or hearty songs. Some evenings, only a short tale was told, a verse sung, and then the hall settled quickly. Yet even this brevity carried weight. The ritual itself, however small, was enough. It told the mind, now is the time to rest, now is the time to dream. And so, slumber came as naturally as breathing. Do you see the beauty of it? Their nights were not empty hours, but carefully woven tapestries. Food, fire, story, song. Each thread supported the others, creating a whole greater than its parts. By the time eyes closed, bodies were nourished, minds soothed, spirits uplifted. Sleep, then, was not escape, but culmination, the gentle closing of a door already prepared to be shut. Perhaps this is why Viking sleep seems so enviable, not because their beds were softer or their lives easier. They were not, but because their nights carried meaning, richness, ritual. Every story told, every song sung, was part of a rhythm that guided them into rest. And in following that rhythm, they slept not only deeply, but fully. And yet, their nights were not only about human voices. Beyond song and story, there was the quiet presence of children themselves, their laughter before sleep, their small bodies curled in warmth, their dreams shaping the household. To understand the fullness of Viking rest, we must now listen to those gentlest of sounds. The hush of children nestled in warmth, safe beneath wool and fur. The longhouse is quieter now, yet not silent. From one corner comes the soft sound of a child's breath, steady and deep. From another, a small murmur, a dream half spoken aloud. The presence of children at night was not disturbance but music, woven into the harmony of rest. For in the Viking world, the night was never only for adults. It was a shared space where children learned the comfort of kinship and the rhythm of safety. Imagine a bench along the wall, lined with straw and covered in wool. A mother lies with her infant close at her chest, the child's tiny fingers curled into the fabric of her tunic. The warmth of her body, the steady beat of her heart, lull the baby more surely than any song. Nearby, older children share a blanket, limbs tangled, whispers fading into sleep. Their laughter, which only moments ago echoed in the hall, is replaced by the silence of dreaming. Children brought life into the Longhouse. Their voices filled the day, their footsteps pattered across earthen floors, their curiosity reached into every corner. Yet at night, their rest shaped the household just as much as their play did by day. Adults watched them soften into slumber, and in their peace found reassurance. The future was safe, carried gently into tomorrow. The rituals of comfort were simple, yet profound. Mothers tucked wool tightly around little bodies. Fathers adjusted furs to block drafts. Older siblings pulled younger ones close. A hand stroked hair. A voice whispered a short blessing. A kiss brushed a brow. These gestures were small, but each told the child, "You are loved, you are safe, you may dream without fear." And so the hall became cradle. The fire's glow reached across beams. Shadows swayed like gentle guardians, and the air carried not harshness, but warmth. Children, wrapped in softness, drifted without resistance. Their dreams were full of the stories they had just heard, their imaginations painting worlds of gods, animals, seas, and stars. Can you picture a child murmuring in sleep, "Thor, hammer," as their mind carried the saga onward into dream? The laughter of children before bed was itself part of the ritual. After feasting, after stories, their energy often lingered. They played small games near the hearth, tossing carved wooden toys or inventing adventures. Parents watched with indulgence, for even this play carried joy. But slowly, as fire lowered, even play stilled. Children leaned against elders, their eyes drooping, until one by one they were carried or guided to bedding. The transition was not abrupt, but natural, flowing like a river into still water. Infants, too, were soothed with gentle rhythms, rocked in arms, hummed to with soft melodies, fed before sleep. Their cries, when they came, were met not with frustration, but with patience, for every adult knew the value of their rest. A crying infant might be passed from mother to grandmother, each taking a turn, each offering warmth, until the child yielded to slumber. In this way, care itself became communal, and the entire household shared in the peace of children's sleep. There is a truth here. The sleep of children is the sleep of a household. When little ones rest deeply, all can rest more easily. And so, much care was given to ensure their comfort. Woolen wrappings, soft pelts, a place close to warmth, a voice nearby. All of these shaped the night into something tender. Perhaps this is one reason the Vikings slept so well. Because they slept together, as families, as communities, with children at the very heart. The seasons shaped children's rest too. In summer, when light lingered, bedtime came later, though laughter often gave way to drowsiness even before darkness fell. In winter, when night stretched endlessly, children sometimes woke in the middle of their first sleep, whispering to one another in the shadows before drifting off again. These patterns were not corrected or resisted. They were accepted as natural, part of the flow of life in a world governed not by clocks, but by nature itself. Do you hear it now? The faint sigh of a child turning in sleep, the rustle of wool pulled tighter, the quiet hum of breath filling the hall. These sounds are softer than sagas, gentler than songs, yet they are stories in themselves. Stories of life continuing, of tomorrow already promised. Adults lying awake for a time might listen, their hearts eased by the knowledge that children rested peacefully. And in that reassurance, they too gave themselves over to sleep. Sometimes dreams were spoken in the morning. A child might say, "I saw a wolf in the snow," or "I sailed with Thor." Elders listened carefully, for dreams carried meaning, and even a child's vision might be taken as omen or sign. In this way, children's sleep was not only rest, but a doorway into mystery, a reminder that even the youngest could touch the unseen. The presence of children also softened the harshness of winter. Their laughter brightened short days, their sighs comforted long nights. In times of scarcity, adults often gave children the best portions of food, the warmest blankets. To watch them sleep was to remember why endurance mattered, why voyages were taken, why harvests were laboured over. Sleep, in this sense, became a kind of promise that the work of today would carry forward through the lives of the young. Can you picture it? A mother's arm curved around her child, both wrapped in fur, faces softened in sleep. A small boy clutches a wooden toy even as he dreams, its shape pressed against his palm. A baby sighs, nestling closer to warmth. Around them, elders rest, their own breathing slowed, the entire hall woven together in one great tapestry of slumber. In this tapestry, children are the brightest threads, their innocence shining even in darkness. The Vikings, often remembered for their raids and battles, are rarely imagined as tender parents. Yet here, in the intimacy of night, tenderness was everywhere. For what greater treasure than a sleeping child? And what deeper peace than knowing tomorrow will dawn with their laughter once more? This is why children's presence mattered so deeply to the rhythm of Viking sleep. Their rest carried the whole household into peace. Their dreams mingled with the sagas and songs of their elders. Their breathing softened the very air. To sleep beside them was to feel hope, to feel continuity, to feel life's rhythm unbroken. And so, in the hush of the Longhouse, with children nestled in warmth, the night stretched on, endless, gentle, certain. Dreams rose and fell like waves. Stories lingered, and the fire's glow dimmed ever lower. Yet in the hearts of all who lay beneath wool and fur, there was a steady calm. Tomorrow would come, and with it, laughter again. But beyond children's sighs and the hearth's glow lay another presence, vast and silent. The gods themselves. For the Vikings believed their nights were not only watched over by kin, but also by unseen eyes, divine and eternal. To step further into their world of sleep, we must now look upward into the watchful silence of the gods. The Longhouse sleeps. Children curl in warmth. Parents breathe in rhythm. Elders lie wrapped in heavy furs. The fire glows faint, embers fading into soft red. Yet for the Vikings, night was never empty. Even when voices fell silent and eyes closed, another presence lingered, vast, unseen, eternal. The gods themselves watched over the darkness. The Norse world was alive with divinity. Odin, All-Father, who wandered in disguise, seeking wisdom. Thor, protector with his hammer, guarding both men and gods against giants. Freya, goddess of love and of the dead, her tears golden as amber. Njord, who calmed seas, and Frigg, who wove fates unseen. These were not distant figures, locked in heaven. They were near, woven into earth, sea, and sky. And at night, their presence was felt most deeply. Imagine lying beneath wool and fur, listening to the hush of winter outside. The darkness stretches vast. Stars glimmer through the smoke hole above. In that moment, you feel not alone. You feel the gaze of powers older than time itself. The gods do not disturb. They watch in silence, their presence like the weight of night sky pressing gently upon the roof. Can you feel it? The sense of being sheltered not only by timber and kin, but by the unseen guardians of the cosmos. Dreams themselves were believed to carry messages from the divine. Odin was said to send visions, whispers of fate, glimpses of what was to come. Some dreams warned of danger, others promised fortune. A dream of a raven might speak of wisdom. A dream of waves might foretell a voyage. To wake from such visions was to carry not mere fantasy, but truth to be pondered. And so, each night held mystery, the possibility that the gods themselves would speak in slumber. The silence of the gods was not heavy, but gentle. It was the kind of silence that cradled, like the stillness of snow, or the pause between waves. In this silence, Vikings rested more easily, believing their sleep was not unguarded. For while human eyes closed, divine eyes remained open. Sometimes, rituals were offered before bed. A whispered prayer to Thor for protection, to Frigg for safe children, to Njord for calm waters if voyages lay ahead. These were not grand ceremonies, but small gestures folded into daily life. A carved amulet set by the bedside, a rune traced upon wood, a short chant spoken into the firelight. Each act was a thread of connection, weaving human rest into divine watchfulness. And so the Vikings slept not only with warmth and kinship, but with faith. This faith was not abstract. It was lived, breathed, felt. The crack of thunder reminded them of Thor. The sweep of stars recalled Odin's wisdom. The scent of sea spray called Njord's name. The night itself was filled with presence, invisible yet certain. Can you picture it now? A child dreams of Freya's necklace. A warrior dreams of Odin's ravens. A farmer dreams of Thor's hammer striking fertile ground. Each dream is both story and message, both comfort and warning. The gods speak softly, not with voice, but with vision, guiding mortals even as they rest. The Longhouse itself seemed a temple at night, its beams blackened with smoke, its fire glowing like an altar flame, its people gathered close in ritual of sleep. Within its walls, both mortal and divine were present. Every sigh, every ember, every shadow belonged to a larger rhythm, one that reached beyond human life into the realm of eternity. There was comfort, too, in knowing that death itself was not an end, but a passage. The Vikings believed that the dead dwelled in halls beyond, some in Valhalla, feasting with Odin, others in Folkvanga with Freya, still others resting in Hell's quiet domain. To sleep at night was, in a way, to rehearse this passage, a gentle letting go, a trust that one would awaken again, whether in morning or in eternity. With such faith, rest came not with fear, but with peace. The silence of the gods did not mean absence, it meant presence without demand. No tasks were asked in the dark, no battles fought in slumber. The gods simply watched, reminding each sleeper that they were part of something vast, unbroken, eternal. In this awareness, the Vikings found a peace few today may know. And yet the silence was not always absolute. Sometimes the night sky flared with aurora, curtains of green and violet rippling above. These lights, some believed, were reflections of Valkyrie's armor, riding across the heavens. To fall asleep after such a vision was to dream not of ordinary things, but of the very presence of the divine sweeping the sky. Even storms could be understood as the gods' voices. Thunder was Thor's hammer striking, lightning his flashing weapon. Rain upon the roof was Njord's blessing, wind through the beams Odin's whisper. With such interpretations, no sound of night was meaningless. Each was layered with presence, with connection, with meaning that turned fear into familiarity. Can you hear it now? The faint moan of wind outside, the creak of timber, the sigh of embers. To us, these are simple sounds. To the Vikings, they were language, signs that gods moved even in the quiet hours. Listening to them, one did not feel alone. One felt part of a living, breathing cosmos. And so when sleep came, it came not into emptiness, but into fullness. The body yielded to fur and wool, the mind softened with story and song, the spirit surrendered to divine silence. Rest was whole, layered, held. This is why their slumber was so deep. Not because their lives were without hardship, but because their nights carried presence greater than fear. Perhaps you can feel it too, as you imagine lying there. The hall dim, children sighing in sleep, elders breathing softly, the fire a low glow. Above, stars glimmer, and beyond them, gods watch. Their silence is vast, yet reassuring. You are not forgotten. You are part of something endless. You may rest. Yet the gods' silence was not the only rhythm that shaped Viking nights. The very structure of the Longhouse itself, its breath, its warmth, its closeness, added another layer of comfort. To understand this, we must next step deeper into the hall and listen to how the Longhouse breathed at night. The Longhouse was more than shelter. It was body, spirit, and breath. By day, it echoed with work and voices. By evening, it glowed with feasting and song. But at night, when sleep settled over every soul, the Longhouse seemed to breathe. Its timbers creaked, its rafters sighed, its fire pulsed faintly like a heart. Within its walls, the rhythms of life blended into one, human, animal, fire and wood, all breathing together. The structure itself shaped this experience. Long, narrow, often stretching more than 20 meters, the hall gathered dozens of people beneath a single roof. Families, servants, animals, tools, and treasures all found place within its walls. The roof, thick with turf, pressed low and heavy, shutting out winter's cold. The walls, lined with timber, absorbed the warmth of fire and bodies. The earth beneath was solid, grounding every step, every breath. At the center, the hearth burned low, smoke curling upward through a roof hole. The air was never entirely clear. It held the faint haze of wood smoke, mingling with the scent of wool, straw, and cooked food. Yet this haze itself was familiar, part of life, as steady as breath. To lie beneath it was not discomfort, but reassurance. It was the smell of safety, of survival, of home. Now imagine lying in such a hall. Around you, bodies shift in slumber. A man sighs, turning beneath fur. A woman murmurs in dream. A child stirs, nestles closer to warmth. Animals, kept in the byre at one end, grunt softly, their breath adding to the rhythm. The fire pops, sending a spark upward. Then all settles again into stillness. And in that stillness you realize the hall itself is breathing. Its breath is not quick, but slow, steady, like the tide. Inhalation, the fire draws in air, flames stirring. Exhalation, smoke drifts upward, warmth spreads outward. Sighs ripple across the hall. Each person's breathing adds to the whole, until the Longhouse seems a single chest, rising and falling. This shared atmosphere shaped sleep in profound ways. No one lay alone, isolated from sound or warmth. Instead, Every sleeper was part of the hall's greater rhythm. To hear others breathing, to feel their warmth near, was to be reminded of belonging. In such belonging, the body relaxed. Fear had no place here, for safety was communal, carried in every exhale. The longhouse creaked at night. Beams shifted as frost pressed against turf, rafters moaned in the wind, walls whispered with settling timbers. Yet these sounds were not threatening. They were known, expected, part of the hall's language. To grow up in such a house was to learn its voice, to know that each creak was simply the building's way of reminding you, I am here, I am holding you, you may rest. Even the animals contributed to this living rhythm. Cows lowed softly, sheep rustled in straw, dogs sighed at their master's feet. These were not intrusions, but lullabies. To the Vikings, animals were part of life, part of household. Their warmth added heat, their presence added comfort. To sleep with animals nearby was not inconvenience but security. The longhouse also taught patience. In winter, drafts crept through cracks. In summer, insects hummed in the night. The air was sometimes smoky, sometimes damp. Yet these were accepted as natural. There was no war against imperfection, no demand for silence or stillness beyond what life could give. Instead, sleep came by yielding to the hall's breath, by aligning oneself with the greater rhythm rather than resisting it. Can you imagine it now? The faint haze above, the fire's glow soft upon beams, the sound of many bodies breathing as one. You lie beneath your fur, your chest rising with the same tempo. The hall's breath carries you, steady and sure, until your own thoughts soften and you drift with it into slumber. This communal breath shaped dreams as well. One dreamed of sailing seas, another of tending fields, another of walking with ancestors. Yet all dreams rose from the same atmosphere, the same rhythm, the same shelter. In this way, the longhouse became more than building. It became dream weaver, binding each sleeper's vision into the tapestry of the whole. There was a spirituality in this, though perhaps unspoken. The hall was not a temple, yet it carried sacredness. It sheltered life. It preserved warmth. It taught endurance. To sleep within it was to surrender to its embrace, to let its breath carry you like a mother rocking a child. Perhaps this is why memories of longhouses lingered even centuries later, not as mere structures, but as living presences, as places that breathed. The rhythm of the hall also reflected the rhythm of the land. In winter, its breath slowed, heavy with long nights and deep sleep. In summer, it quickened, filled with voices rising earlier, resting later. The hall was not apart from nature, but part of it, a vessel through which the earth's cycles flowed. To live and sleep within it was to live and sleep within the larger breath of the world itself. Do you hear it? The hush of many breaths blending, the creak of beams, the sigh of embers. Close your eyes, and you may feel the hall's chest rise and fall, carrying you with it. There is no hurry, no resistance, only rhythm, only breath. And in that rhythm, peace. Perhaps this is the truest reason why the Vikings slept so well. Not because their nights were free of hardship, but because they surrendered to the breath of life itself, of kin, of fire, of animals, of wood and stone. Their longhouses held them, breathed with them, and taught them that rest is not isolation, but union. Yet even as the longhouse breathed, another rhythm shaped their nights. The return of voyagers, the gathering of stories from beyond, the renewal of bonds when families reunited at hearth and bench. To step further into this world of rest, we must now listen to how voyagers, weary from sea and road, return to the cradle of the Longhouse, and how their sleep carried the sweetness of homecoming. The sea has carried them far, and now it carries them home. Oars dip slow as the longship nears the fjord, its prow cutting the black water like a memory returning. The sail droops, the wind softer here, sheltered by cliffs that rise on either side. The men aboard are weary. Their eyes burn from salt wind, their limbs heavy from labour. Yet as they round the final bend and glimpse the smoke rising from their village, a calm falls over them. The Longhouse waits, its roof dark against snow, its fire already kindled. Home has drawn them back, and with it, the promise of rest unlike any found upon sea or shore abroad. The boat scrapes against stone, ropes thrown, timbers creak as the vessel is tied. One by one they step onto land, boots sinking into damp earth. The cold bites sharper here, not softened by the sea's spray, but it is welcome, for it is familiar. Voices greet them, faint at first, then louder. Children running, women waving cloaks against the wind. Embraces are short, but full of warmth. There will be time to share stories later. For now, every man feels the pull not of talk, but of sleep. The journey's weight still clings to them, and the Longhouse calls with arms of timber and turf, ready to receive them back into its breathing silence. Inside, the air is thick with warmth. Firelight glows against smoke-dark beams. Shadows sway like sails caught in gentle wind. The smell of stew and baked bread clings to the air, mingled with the scent of wool, fur, and damp cloaks hung to dry. For those who have slept on planks and rope bundles, this air is paradise itself. They step across the threshold, shoulders dropping, eyes softening, as though the house itself has lifted a burden from them. Cloaks are shed, boots removed, and at last they lower themselves onto benches they know as well as their own hands. The wood creaks, but it is a familiar creak, not the groan of ship timbers straining at sea. Here, every sound belongs. The meal comes quickly, steaming bowls of broth, thick bread, mugs of ale. The Voyagers eat with steady hunger, but already their movements are slower, their voices quieter. The fatigue of travel wraps them as surely as the wool blankets soon will. Children lean close to hear a story, but the men's eyes droop, their words trail off into murmurs. Laughter rises briefly, then fades like sparks into smoke. One by one, they draw their furs tighter, lean back, and close their eyes. There is a sweetness to this homecoming rest, a depth no sea sleep could match. On the ship, slumber was shallow, broken by wind and watch. Dreams were fragile, interrupted by creaks and splashes. But here, in the Longhouse, the body yields completely. Muscles loosen, breaths deepen, eyes flutter shut with relief. It is not only the fur against skin or the warmth of fire, but the nearness of kin that creates this peace. Beside them lie wives, children, parents, friends. Their breathing blends into one great rhythm, and the Voyagers join it, carried into dream not by oars or waves, but by belonging. Can you imagine it? A man who has watched stars over foreign seas now closes his eyes beneath the same roof beams he knew as a boy. The smell of home, smoke, straw, bread fills his chest, and he sighs into it, as though inhaling memory itself. He dreams not of storms or strange shores, but of familiar fields, of voices calling his name. His hands, calloused from oars, unclench at last. His brow, furrowed by worry, smooths. His body, so long on guard, trusts enough to yield. For those returning, the Longhouse offers more than warmth. It offers reintegration. On the sea, each man was part of crew, his labour bound to the rhythm of oars. At home, he becomes again part of family. Sleep itself marks this shift. No longer does he drift in isolation upon the deck, waking at every sound. Now he lies in chorus, his breath joined with those of kin, his body merged into the great communal rhythm of the hall. This sleep is not only deeper, it is healing. It restores not only strength, but identity. The fire watches over them, embers glowing like guardian eyes. Sparks rise now and then, but even these seem gentle, as though unwilling to disturb the peace. Outside, snow falls softly against turf roof, muffling the world. The fjord lies silent, save for the occasional crack of ice. But inside, every sound is soft. The sigh of a sleeper turning, the faint murmur of a dream, the rustle of fur. The Longhouse breathes, and the Voyagers breathe with it. Morning will bring stories. Children will beg to hear of foreign lands, of markets and battles, of ships and storms. Elders will listen with nods. Women will laugh at exaggerations. But night is not for stories. Night is for silence, for rest, for the unspoken bond of return. Every voyager knows that their greatest treasure is not silver or silk, but this, the chance to close their eyes at home, in safety, in warmth, surrounded by all they love. And the dreams of homecoming are unlike any other. They are rich, vivid, layered with memory and relief. A man dreams of his childhood, of running through meadows, of hearing his mother's song. Another dreams of feasts long past, tables laden, laughter rising. Another dreams simply of stillness, of lying in sunlight without labour, of feeling earth beneath his feet. These dreams carry no burden, no warning. They are gifts offered by the gods as reward for journeys endured. Sometimes, even in sleep, voyagers stir and smile. A child's hand, resting against theirs, is enough to bring such peace. A wife's breathing beside them, steady and calm, anchors them deeper. The warmth of dog curled at their feet reminds them that every part of home is present. And so, their slumber is not restless, not watchful, but whole. They wake not often, but fully renewed. Can you picture the Longhouse then? Fire low, stars beyond the smoke hole, breaths rising and falling together. The Voyagers lie scattered among kin, each wrapped in fur, each surrendered to the same rhythm. Their ship rests silent in the fjord, its timbers creaking faintly against the water. The sea waits, patient, for their return. But for now, the only voyage is inward, across the still waters of dream. In this, the Vikings reveal another secret of their deep rest. It was not only in the warmth of furs or the silence of snow, but in the return itself, the cycle of leaving and coming home, of journey and reunion. Each voyage made the next homecoming sweeter. Each absence deepened the peace of return. Sleep after such journeys was profound because it was more than rest. It was restoration, reconciliation, the weaving of sundered threads back into wholeness. Perhaps you feel it too as you imagine lying there, the exhaustion of travel melting into the embrace of home. The hall breathes around you, voices hushed, fire low, snow drifting beyond. You close your eyes, and the world you left behind falls away. You are held by kin, by roof, by land itself. You are home. And in that word, in that truth, sleep comes sweeter than anywhere else upon earth. But even as voyagers rest, another truth hums quietly in the air. That sleep itself carried meaning. That dreams were not private but part of kinship. That the night spoke its own language. To understand how fully Vikings embraced rest, we must now listen to the secret language of sleep and kinship. The Longhouse lies deep in silence, yet it is not the silence of emptiness. It is the silence of connection, of unspoken words, of breath shared among kin. In the darkness, families lie close, wrapped in wool and fur, each dreaming their own dream, yet all joined in the same great rhythm of night. This is the secret language of sleep and kinship, a language without words, yet one that every soul within the hall understands. Kinship was the heart of Viking life. Blood-bound families together, but so too did marriage, friendship, fosterage, and oath. In the Longhouse, these bonds became tangible, as close as the furs drawn across shoulders. To sleep side by side was to declare trust, to surrender one's most vulnerable hours into the care of others. When a man closed his eyes, he placed his safety in the breath of those around him. When a woman drifted into dream, she did so with the certainty that kin would guard her. In this way, sleep itself was a ritual of kinship, a nightly act of faith that bound family more tightly than words. Imagine the benches lined along the Longhouse walls, each layered with straw and cloth. A family settles into place, parents on either side, children nestled between, grandparents nearby, cousins close. Their bodies lie in gentle closeness, shoulders brushing, arms resting across one another. The warmth of one becomes the warmth of all. Even the simple act of turning in sleep shifts blankets that cover not one, but many. In this arrangement, no one belongs to solitude. All belong to each other. This closeness carried meaning deeper than comfort. A child, waking briefly in the dark, might hear the steady breath of her father and relax, reassured that strength lay near. A mother, half awake, might feel the small warmth of an infant against her chest and sink back into slumber with peace. An elder, stirring from dream, might listen to the murmurs of grandchildren and smile in the dark. Each sound, each movement, was part of a secret conversation, a language spoken not with tongue, but with presence. Even in dreams, kinship endured. Vikings often believed that dreams could carry messages, omens, even glimpses of the divine. When a family member spoke of a dream at dawn, others listened, seeking meaning. A son's vision of storm might warn of trouble. A daughter's dream of fields might promise abundance. In this way, the language of sleep extended into waking, shaping choices, guiding lives. To dream within kinship was to dream for the whole, not only for oneself. The breath of the Longhouse at night was its own form of kinship. Dozens of lungs inhaled and exhaled together, blending into one rhythm. The sound was steady, like waves against shore, like wind through forest, like the pulse of life itself. For a traveller returned from sea, this rhythm was sweeter than any song. For a child, it was the first lullaby. For an elder, it was the sound of continuity, proof that life endured. Can you feel it? The hush of many breaths blending, the rustle of fur as bodies shift, the faint murmur of a dream half spoken. These sounds create a language without grammar, yet rich with meaning. They say, we are here, we are safe, we belong to one another. And in this unspoken assurance, sleep comes deeper than solitude could ever allow. Kinship at night was also practical. In winter, warmth was survival. To share sleep was to share heat, each body adding to the cocoon of warmth that kept frost from seeping in. But beyond survival lay tenderness. Parents pulled children close not only to warm them, but to reassure them. Lovers lay near not only for comfort, but for intimacy. Even friends, foster brothers, and companions learned the closeness of shared rest. Each gesture, each nearness was a thread in the web of kinship. There is beauty in the way the Longhouse blurred boundaries. The same roof covered all, young and old, rich and poor, kin and guest. Each found a place upon the benches, each shared in the rhythm of night. Sleep made equals of all, for in slumber all were vulnerable, all were human, all were bound together by the same need for rest. To wake in the night and see others lying close, to hear their breathing, was to be reminded of one's place in the great weave of life. In the morning, when eyes opened and light filtered through the smoke hole, the secret language of night gave way to words, but its memory lingered. Parents recalled the feel of a child's hand resting against theirs. Children remembered the warmth of bodies on either side. Elders carried with them the peace of having lain surrounded by those who honoured and needed them. This memory made kinship tangible, alive, renewed each day. The Vikings did not see sleep as wasted hours. They saw it as part of life's fabric, as necessary as work, as meaningful as story, as binding as feast. In the hush of night, bonds were strengthened without effort. Trust was deepened without words. Love was affirmed in the simple act of sharing breath. Perhaps this is why they slept so well. Their rest was not fractured by isolation, not divided by fear, but whole, woven into the fabric of kinship itself. Do you picture it now? The hall dim, fire low, families curled together in warmth. A child murmurs and is soothed by a mother's hand. A man sighs and draws his cloak tighter around his wife. An elder smiles in dream, hearing voices of ancestors in sleep. All these moments, soft and unspoken, form a language more enduring than speech. They say what cannot be said by daylight, that we belong to each other, that life continues, that night is safe. And so, as the Longhouse breathes, as dreams rise and fall, the secret language of sleep and kinship weaves itself. It is not taught, but known. It is not spoken, but felt. It binds the living to one another and the present to the past, and in its embrace, rest becomes more than slumber. It becomes communion. Perhaps this is why, when dawn comes, the Vikings rose not only refreshed, but renewed. They had not only slept, they had been held by kin, by hall, by silence, by gods. They had spoken in the language of night, and in that language they found peace. Yet kinship was not only shaped by blood or household, it was shaped also by the rhythm of seasons, by the endless cycle of light and dark that governed their world. To understand the fullness of Viking rest, we must now step into those great cycles themselves, into the seasons of light and the seasons of darkness that shaped every dream. The Norse lands were shaped by extremes. Summer brought days so long that the sun seemed reluctant to set, casting gold upon the earth far into the night. Winter brought the opposite, nights so deep and enduring that the world seemed wrapped in shadow. Between these poles life unfolded, and so too did sleep. For the Vikings, rest was not constant or measured by rigid hours. It was tuned to the turning of seasons, to the breath of the earth itself. Imagine the endless summer day. The sun hangs low, but never fully disappears. Its light glowing at the horizon even at midnight. Shadows stretch, then soften, then vanish into a dusk that never quite becomes night. The air hums with insects, rivers glitter, fields shimmer with grain. Work lingers late into evening. Fishing lines cast long after supper. Fields tended while the air still glows. Laughter echoing into hours that elsewhere would be dark. Sleep, in these seasons, is shorter, lighter, woven into pauses rather than long stretches. Children lie down, still squinting against light. Elders close their eyes while birds still sing. Rest comes not because darkness demands it, but because the body, tired from endless activity, finally yields. These summer sleeps are thin veils. One wakes often, stirred by light spilling through roof gaps, by sounds of animals restless in long twilight, by the call of seabirds at all hours. Yet this rest is not troubled. It is enough, because the sun itself lends energy and the world hums with life. To lie beneath wool in summer is to feel less need for heavy dreams, more contentment with short slumbers between labours. And though sleep is briefer, it is no less real. It is the kind of sleep that comes easily, naturally, unresisted, a dipping into rest when the body insists, then rising again to meet the light. Now picture the deep winter. The sun rises late and falls early, its light faint, weak against the vastness of shadow. The air is cold, the ground hard, the fjord rimmed with ice. Work is slower, fields lie fallow, ships rest on shore. Within the longhouse, fire burns steady, meals are heavier, voices quieter. Sleep here stretches long, like the nights themselves. Families surrender early, drawing close beneath furs, rising only when fire demands tending. Some nights are divided, the first sleep deep and heavy, the second lighter, broken by quiet conversation or prayer. Others are whole, stretching across hours upon hours of darkness. Dreams in winter are richer, more vivid, filled with stories and visions that seem to bloom in the absence of sun. In this way, the seasons governed not only life, but the very quality of sleep. In summer, rest was brief but sufficient, sustained by endless light. In winter, rest was long and restorative, demanded by darkness. The Vikings did not resist this rhythm. They embraced it, folding their lives into the turning of the year. To sleep differently in summer and winter was not seen as imbalance, but as balance itself, a harmony with the world. There is wisdom here. Modern life seeks to regulate, to standardize, to command the body into uniform rest. But the Vikings accepted fluctuation. They did not fight light with shutters, nor darkness with endless lamps. They yielded. In light, they lived longer hours awake. In darkness, they rested more. And in this yielding, their sleep was aligned with the earth, not with human invention. Can you feel it? The hush of winter night, fire dim, breath slow, dreams heavy with meaning. The brightness of summer, laughter spilling late, slumber brief, yet satisfying. Each season carried its own gift, its own rhythm. Each season taught the body a different kind of peace. These cycles shape memory as well. A child might recall the joy of falling asleep while sun still glowed at the horizon, eyelids heavy though the world was bright. That same child, in winter, might recall curling tightly against kin, listening to wind howl as dreams carried them far. Both became part of identity, part of the understanding that life itself moved in cycles, and that sleep was part of this great wheel. Even rituals reflected the seasons. In winter, nights were marked with feasts, Yule above all, when darkness was deep and fire burned brightest. These gatherings reminded families that even in shadow, joy remained. After such feasts, sleep was deep, heavy, softened by food, drink, and laughter. In summer, gatherings spilled outside, beneath endless twilight skies. Sleep came later, often outdoors, on grass or beside rivers, as warmth lingered and stars remained faint against the glow. Both kinds of rest carried comfort, both were sacred in their own way. Dreams too reflected the seasons. In summer they were fleeting, bright, often forgotten quickly upon waking. In winter they were long, layered, lingering into morning, shared by fireside as omens or stories. To dream in winter was to touch mystery more deeply. To dream in summer was to brush against it lightly, as one brushes against tall grass while walking. Both were threads of the same fabric, both necessary to weave a life. The gods themselves were tied to these rhythms. Odin, seeker of wisdom, was said to wander long in winter nights, whispering visions into dreams. Thor's storms often came with summer's heat, his hammer echoing in thunder that shook sleepers awake. Freya, goddess of fertility, was honoured in spring when dreams of planting and growth filled the Longhouse. Njord's presence was strongest in summer voyages, when sailors slept briefly on ships. Rocked by seas he calmed or stirred. To the Vikings the gods moved with seasons, and so too did their nights. And always the Longhouse adapted. Its breath was slower in winter, filled with the warmth of many bodies resting longer. In summer it quickened, filled with voices rising earlier, sleeping later. The house itself seemed to shift with the year, never rigid, always in rhythm with the land. To live within it was to live within the earth's cycle. To sleep within it was to surrender to the same. Perhaps this is the greatest secret of Viking sleep. It was not bound to an artificial clock, but to the cosmos itself. The turning of seasons, the dance of sun and moon, the balance of light and dark. These governed when eyes closed, when bodies yielded, when dreams rose. And in aligning themselves with these rhythms, the Vikings found rest not as struggle, but as gift. Do you see it now? The glow of summer night, where children fall asleep laughing though the sky is still pale. The hush of winter, where the world lies wrapped in shadow and whole families dream together while snow piles high against walls. Both are sacred, both carry peace, both teach that rest is not fixed, but flowing, part of life's endless circle. And so, through seasons of light and seasons of darkness, the Vikings slept deeply, fully, wholly. Their rest was not measured by hours, but by harmony, not by command, but by surrender. They accepted what the world gave, and in that acceptance, they found peace. Yet beyond the great rhythm of seasons lay another truth, that safety itself and the rituals surrounding it shaped how the Vikings surrendered to sleep. To enter night with trust was to enter it fully. To understand why their rest was so profound, we must now step into these soft rituals of safety and trust, the final gestures before dreams began. The night deepened, but before sleep could fully embrace the hall, there were rituals. Not rituals carved into law or bound by priestly decree, but soft gestures, small habits repeated until they became as natural as breath. These rituals of safety and trust were the final steps between waking and dreaming, the unseen bridge that allowed every Viking soul to rest without fear. Safety was never taken for granted. The world beyond the Longhouse walls could be harsh, storms sweeping from the sea, wolves pacing the forests, rival clans stirring in the distance. Yet inside, trust was woven carefully, thread by thread, until even in darkness, the heart felt secure. To prepare for sleep was not only to wrap the body in wool and fur, but to quiet the mind with certainty that the night would hold no harm. One of the simplest rituals was tending the fire. Before families curled beneath their furs, someone, often the elder of the household, would rise and spread ash over the glowing embers. This ash was a blanket, keeping the coals alive without letting flames flare too high. It ensured warmth until morning, a quiet promise that no one would wake to cold, or to danger from stray sparks. The crackle of wood dimmed into a low glow, and the hall sank into calm. To watch embers banked carefully was to feel reassured. The fire would not abandon them. Doors, too, were secured, though not with iron bolts or heavy locks. A simple bar across the wooden frame, a stone set against the threshold, perhaps a charm carved into the wood. These were not only physical barriers, but symbolic ones. They said to all within, "The night is ours, the hall is closed, nothing will enter uninvited." Children, hearing the bar slide into place, felt safe, knowing that their world was sealed tight against the unknown. Amulets and tokens often lay near bedding. A small Thor's hammer carved from iron, a rune etched into wood, a pendant hung by the hearth. These were not ornaments, but guardians. Each carried meaning, a silent prayer that gods would watch through the night. A father might place his hammer pendant near his son's straw bed, a mother her woven charm near her infant. These objects whispered safety, their presence enough to ease the passage into dream. Blessings were sometimes spoken, soft as sighs, a whispered prayer to Frigg for children's rest, to Thor for protection, to ancestors for guidance. These words were not shouted, but breathed, as though the hall itself listened. In such prayers, the boundary between waking and sleep blurred. A mother's lips brushed her child's forehead. A father's hand rested briefly on his daughter's hair. And in these gestures lay trust deeper than words. Animals, too, played their part in safety. Dogs curled near doors, their presence both warmth and warning. Their ears twitched at the faintest sound, their sighs blended into the hall's breath. To sleep, knowing a faithful hound kept watch, was to sleep with ease. Even the lowing of cattle or the rustle of sheep was comfort, reminders that life surrounded them, that all was as it should be. Kinship itself was the greatest ritual. To lie close, to share warmth, to feel the press of another's shoulder, was to know one was never alone. Solitude can make night heavy, but shared sleep lightens it. A child reaching out in the dark found a hand. A lover stirring found the warmth of a body beside them. An elder coughing found a grandchild's arm draped across their chest. Each gesture was trust embodied, woven into the fabric of night. Can you imagine it? The final sounds before sleep, the soft clatter of a bowl set aside, the hush of voices dropping into silence, the faint scrape of a bar across the door. A dog circles once, then settles. An elder murmurs a prayer. The fire exhales, covered in ash. Slowly, the hall becomes still, the rhythm of breath rising as one, and in this stillness, safety blooms. Dreams born of such trust are deep. They are not troubled by fear of intrusion, not fractured by doubt. Instead, they flow like rivers, carrying sleepers far yet always returning them to safe shores. A child may dream of sailing with gods, a farmer of fields heavy with grain, a voyager of seas crossed and kin embraced. Each dream is nourished by the certainty that the waking world waits unchanged, secure, whole. There is a profound tenderness in these rituals. They may seem small, a bar slid across wood, a hand brushed through hair, a charm set on straw. Yet they hold power greater than walls or weapons. They tell each soul, you may surrender, you may close your eyes, you may let go of vigilance, for others will hold it for you. In this surrender lies the heart of rest, the reason their sleep was whole. The rituals were not rigid. They shifted with season, with household, with need. But always, they carried the same essence, to create a threshold between wake and dream, to anchor night in safety. Perhaps one evening it was a story told before embers dimmed, another it was a song, another a prayer whispered. All were different, yet all spoke the same language of trust. And in the morning, when fire was stirred back to flame, when doors were unbarred, when voices rose again, these rituals lingered in memory. Children recalled the kiss before sleep. Adults remembered the warmth of shared blankets. Elders the sound of prayers drifting into dark. These memories stitched night into day, creating a continuity that made life itself feel whole. Do you feel it now? The hall sealed against storm, the embers glowing under ash, the breath of kin steady, the silence deep yet filled with presence. This is the atmosphere of safety, the cocoon in which dreams are spun. To lie here is to surrender not to emptiness, but to a world already held, already guarded. It is to trust both the seen and the unseen, both kin and gods, both wood and fire. And in that trust, sleep comes not only deep, but peaceful. This is why the Vikings slept so well. Their nights were not entered unprepared, but softened by ritual, by gestures that spoke more loudly than words. Safety was not demanded, it was created, renewed each evening in the smallest of acts. And in that creation lay the gift of true rest. Yet dreams themselves, born of such trust, carried power of their own. They were not idle visions, but journeys, sometimes vivid, sometimes prophetic, always meaningful. To understand the fullness of Viking sleep, we must now follow them into these dreams, into the journeys of night, when slumber became passage and vision became truth. The hall is silent, the fire a faint red glow beneath its blanket of ash. Outside, snow gathers against the turf roof, or in summer, dew settles on the grass beyond. Inside, bodies lie wrapped in wool and fur, their breaths rising and falling in unison. Yet though the Longhouse rests, the minds within it do not. Dreams unfold, carrying each sleeper away on journeys as real to the spirit as any voyage upon sea or land. For the Vikings, dreams were never dismissed as idle visions. They were signs, omens, messages from gods or ancestors. A dream could carry wisdom, reveal destiny, or warn of danger. It could also comfort, filling the night with images of joy, love, and abundance. To dream was not to escape reality, but to touch its deeper layers. In the quiet hours, the mind wandered roads unseen, and every dream was a journey worth remembering. Picture a young sailor, returned from his first voyage, now lying in the warmth of his family's hall. His body is heavy with exhaustion, yet in sleep, he feels again the rocking of waves, hears again the call of seabirds, sees the stars reflected on black water. But in his dream, the ship sails farther than any he has known, into seas without end, where gods walk upon the waves. He wakes at dawn with salt still on his lips, his dream lingering as though he had truly sailed into another world. His family listens as he tells it, and though they smile, they also nod, for they know dreams may hold truths yet to unfold. Now imagine a mother, her child nestled close against her chest. In sleep, she dreams of fields golden with grain, of children running laughing through meadows, of baskets full and winters mild. She wakes with peace in her heart, certain that the gods have promised abundance. She tells her husband, and when planting begins, her dream is remembered as blessing. In this way, dreams guided not only hearts but choices, weaving themselves into the rhythm of life. Even children's dreams carried weight. A boy might dream of wolves in snow, their eyes bright as fire, His elders would not dismiss it. They might see in it a warning of harsh winter or a reminder to guard the flock. A girl might dream of birds flying south, and her dream could be read as a sign of journeys to come. In this culture, no dream was too small, no vision too simple to be without meaning. Dreams were maps drawn by the unseen, and to ignore them was to miss the guidance of gods. The journeys of dreams often reflected the stories told before sleep. A saga of Thor might shape a boy's night, filling it with visions of hammers and lightning. A tale of Freya might bring a girl dreams of beauty, of golden necklaces, of love enduring across distance. In this way, story and dream flowed together, one feeding the other, until waking and sleeping seemed less like opposites and more like companions. Can you feel it now? The hall dark and hushed, yet alive with unseen journeys. One sleeper walks with Odin across misty roads. Another sails with Njord across seas of silver. Another gathers flowers in Freya's fields. These are not fantasies to them, but truths tasted, glimpses of realities beyond waking. And each dream, upon telling in morning, becomes part of the household story, another thread in the fabric of kinship. Some dreams brought warnings. A warrior might see a raven tearing at flesh, and elders would know it spoke of battle ahead. A farmer might dream of fields withering, and preparations would be made for leaner harvest. These dreams carried weight, treated as messages sent for protection. They shaped choices, preserved lives, reminded all that the unseen world was as real as the seen. To dream was to converse with powers greater than oneself. Other dreams brought comfort. To see ancestors smiling, to hear a mother's voice long gone, to walk fields of youth once more. These were gifts of night, reminders that love endured even beyond death. To wake from such dreams was to rise lighter, steadier, certain that one was never truly alone. This comfort carried families through hardship, turning night into healing ground. The Vikings also believed dreams could reveal destiny. A young man dreaming of sailing to unknown lands might be told he was chosen for voyage. A girl dreaming of fire might be seen as fated for passion or power. These interpretations were not idle. They shaped how individuals understood themselves, how families prepared for future, how communities read the will of gods. Sleep was not passive. It was participation in life's unfolding. Dreams at sea carried special resonance. Sailors sleeping on ships often dreamed vividly, their minds stirred by the endless rocking of waves and the vastness of horizon. Some dreamed of storms before they came, others of land before it was sighted. These dreams were shared in morning, treated as guidance. A ship might change course, or a crew prepare for battle based on visions seen in slumber. In this way, dreams became navigation, part of the tools of survival. Even nightmares had place. To dream of falling, of drowning, of wolves' teeth was frightening, yet not meaningless. Such dreams were warnings, urging greater vigilance, reminding sleepers that life was fragile. They were not dismissed but respected, part of the dialogue between mortal and divine. To wake in sweat was not shame, but revelation, a sign that gods or ancestors spoke urgently. And so, the night became a realm of journeys, some bright, some dark, all significant. Each morning, dreams were spoken, pondered, sometimes acted upon. Children gathered close to hear. Elders offered interpretation. Families wove visions into decisions. In this way, the unseen shaped the seen, and sleep became more than rest. It became counsel. Do you see it? The hall at dawn, light creeping through the smoke hole, fire stirred back to flame. families stir, stretching, rubbing eyes. And soon, words begin. I dreamed of a wolf. I dreamed of golden fields. I dreamed of sails on the horizon. These words are not dismissed but received, considered, held with respect. In such sharing, dreams become communal, no longer belonging to one sleeper but to all. They shape not only individual hearts, but the direction of the household itself. This is why Viking sleep was so profound. It was not only physical renewal, but spiritual journey, guidance, communion. Each night offered passage into realms unseen, and each morning brought gifts from those realms back into waking life. Their sleep was not divided from life, but part of it, as essential as breath, as meaningful as kinship, as guiding as the stars. Perhaps you feel it now, imagining yourself beneath fur and wool, the hall hushed, the fire low, your mind softening into dream. You sense the presence of gods, the voices of ancestors, the rhythm of waves or wind. You drift, and in drifting you travel, farther than any waking step could carry you. You wake with vision lingering, heart lighter, path clearer. You have journeyed, and you have returned. Yet even dreams, with all their power, are only part of the whole. For in the end, every night, every ritual, every story and journey carried toward one truth: that sleep itself was sacred, a gift to be honored. And as the night draws to its close, we must enter the final chamber of the Viking slumber, the closing of the hearth, the opening of sleep eternal, the gentle farewell that marked each day's end. The embers glow faint beneath their covering of ash. The Longhouse lies still, its beams blackened by countless nights, its roof heavy with turf and snow. Outside, wind whispers along the fjord, or summer insects hum beneath the endless dusk. Inside, all is quiet now. The day has ended, its labours folded into memory. The voices have softened into silence, and sleep stretches across the hall like a blanket. This is the moment of closing, not only of eyes, but of hearth, of story, of day itself. The hearth, banked with care, holds its warmth even in quiet. It is the heart of the hall, the guardian that never dies. Ash covers coals like a mother's hand upon a child, preserving life until morning. The fire is not gone. It waits, glowing faintly, a promise that dawn will find it ready to rise again. Around it, shadows pool in corners, beams creak gently, the air still fragrant with smoke and herbs. The hall is more than structure. It is a living companion, exhaling softly as those within it surrender to night. Sleep now carries everyone, children curled against parents, elders wrapped in fur, voyagers home from sea, farmers weary from field, craftsmen tired from work. Their breaths rise and fall together, a chorus of life. Each sleeper travels their own dream. One sails distant waters, another walks green fields, another speaks with ancestors in golden halls. Yet though each dream is separate, all are bound together in the rhythm of night. The Longhouse breathes as one, holding them in its embrace. There is a holiness in this closing. The Norse knew that life and death were never far, that each day could bring storm or loss. But night was not feared. It was honoured, trusted, entered with ritual and care. The closing of the hearth was a symbol of this trust, a reminder that even when flames dimmed, warmth endured. The gods watched, kinship held, safety remained. In this assurance, sleep came as gift, not as burden. Can you picture it? The last sounds before stillness, the scraping of a bowl set aside, the low voice of an elder whispering a prayer, the rustle of fur as children are tucked close. Then silence deepens, The dog sighs near the door, the fire exhales, the hall itself seems to settle into slumber. In that silence, peace is complete. The day has ended, yet nothing has been lost. All has been gathered into rest. The Vikings did not divide sleep from life. To them, it was part of the cycle, as necessary as labour, as meaningful as feast, as guiding as story. They accepted its rhythms, its dreams, its silences. They honoured the gods within it, the kinship it strengthened, the healing it brought. In this acceptance, they found peace deeper than many know today. They did not fight the night, nor fear it. They entered it as one enters a hall, with trust, with reverence, with gratitude. Dreams continued their journeys, weaving visions of gods and ancestors, of voyages and fields, of life and death. Some dreams would be remembered at dawn, shared with family, guiding choices. Others would vanish like mist, leaving only a feeling, a weight, a blessing. Yet all carried meaning. To sleep was to travel, to listen, to be guided. Each night was both ending and beginning, both closing and opening. And so the hearth glowed low, the hall breathed steady, the people slept. Outside, stars turned across the sky, or clouds swept dark and heavy. Seasons shifted, light waxed and waned, storms came and passed. But always night returned, and with it, rest. The Vikings met it not with resistance, but with open arms. They slept deeply because they trusted deeply, in kin, in gods, in the cycles of nature, in the strength of their halls. Perhaps you feel it now, the calm of a longhouse in slumber, the hush of snow beyond walls, the warmth of fur across your chest, the breath of kin rising beside you. You feel the weight of safety, the softness of trust, the presence of something greater holding you. In this imagining, you too are part of that hall, part of that rhythm. Your eyes close, your breath slows, and you are carried into dream as gently as they once were. The closing of the hearth is not only their story, it is ours as well. For each night, we too surrender, we too trust, we too enter the silence of rest. We may not lie upon straw or under turf, but the essence is unchanged. Sleep is still a journey, a ritual, a gift. And when we honour it, when we yield to it with reverence, we share in the wisdom the Vikings knew. That true rest is found not in fighting night, but in welcoming it. So let the hearth within you glow softly. Let the breath of your body join the rhythm of countless others who have surrendered to night. Let the silence hold you, the dreams guide you, the peace embrace you. The hall of sleep is vast, and its doors are always open. Step into it now as they once did, with trust, with stillness, with gratitude. And may your rest be deep, your dreams gentle, your night unbroken. The hearth is closed, the world is safe, and the opening of sleep awaits.